In today's video, I'm going to show you how to greatly extend the life of your vehicle's transmission, especially if you use the vehicle for towing, carrying a lot of weight, frequently drive in hot weather, climb steep grades, or do a lot of stop-and-go city driving. Doing what I'm about to show you can add tens of thousands or more miles of life to your transmission. Besides good driving habits and scheduled automatic transmission fluid changes, the temperature of the transmission fluid is extremely important. Having fluid that is too hot can cause the fluid to break down prematurely, as well as cause damage to the transmission's internal components. Now, the way the transmission cools is very simple. You have two lines coming from the transmission. One is a pressure line or a feed line, and the other is a return line. Hot transmission fluid is pumped from the transmission into that feed line or pressure line, and it goes into the bottom rail of the radiator where there's a heat exchanger. And what that heat exchanger does is it takes the heat from the transmission and it's absorbed into the engine coolant, which is at a lower temperature. So the engine coolant is around 180 to 200 degrees, so it's going to lower the temperature of that transmission fluid down to that level. The heat exchanger is located in the bottom of the radiator because that's the coolest part of the radiator before the coolant is returned back to the engine again. When the transmission fluid leaves the heat exchanger, which looks like what you see right over here, I have a video showing this in detail at the end of this video. If you'd like to see that, just click on the link at the very end. When it leaves the heat exchanger, it's going to go back much cooler than what it was when the fluid entered the heat exchanger. So what I'd like to do is get that temperature down as low as possible to greatly increase the life of the transmission. Now, in order to get the temperature of that fluid as low as possible, we're going to be adding another cooler to the system in series. Now, what I mean by in series, we're going to leave the one that's installed in the bottom of the radiator alone. You have the pressure line going in. That's the hot fluid on the bottom. I'll show you in a minute. It's going to exit into the return line. We're going to take off the return line and we're going to connect it into another cooler, and then the other side of the cooler is going to connect to the return line and go back to the transmission. By doing that, you're going to greatly reduce the temperature of the fluid and also increase the life of the transmission. Now, to do this, you're going to need to identify the pressure line and the return line. There's a few ways you could do it. You can go online and search for your vehicle to identify which one is the right one. You can call the dealership up, or you can go inside your vehicle when the engine is cold, start the engine up, put your foot on the brake, place it into drive, don't move for about 10-15 seconds, shut the engine off, and then you're going to come back outside and you're going to grab each one of the lines going into the transmission's cooler inside the radiator. One should be warmer than the other. The one that's warmer is the pressure line. You want to leave that one alone, and the one you're going to be disconnecting is the return line. Now let's take a look at the unit that I'm going to be installing, and I'm also going to be placing a link in the video description area for the one that I'm installing, as well as a heavier duty version in the event you'd like to install one yourself on your vehicle. Okay, this is the cooler I'm going to be using, model 1677, that's the medium duty, and a 1678 is for heavier duty use. It's made by Hayden Automotive, Transaver Plus transmission oil cooler. This has brazed construction, it's very strong, and it's also 33% more efficient than traditional coolers. Let me open it up and we'll take a look at the inside. Okay, everything you see here is included in the box, along with the instruction manual. Transmission cooler, you have about 4 feet of hose. You have these little pads, I'll show you where they go in a minute. You can either mount this directly up against your condenser from your AC using these pads, as well as these connectors right here with these end pieces, or you can bolt it in a different position altogether using the hardware that's included. Also included are the 4 hose clamps. Let me show you exactly where this is going to be mounted. Right here you're looking at the AC condenser. You're going to be mounting the oil cooler right up against the AC condenser on the side where your lines are preferably, and you want to make sure you face these ends down to make it easy to connect, or if your lines are on the right side, you can connect them facing to the right like you see here. So I'm going to reach in But before you do that, take the pads and you're going to peel off the backing, and you're going to center the holes in the pad over the holes inside the metal framework. Once this is positioned in the right spot, you're going to insert this rod all the way through. And this long rod is going to go in between the fins on the radiator all the way through, where you're going to slide a button on the other side to keep this well secured. Now on this vehicle, which is a V6 2.7, it's a Hyundai, right over here, this line is the feed line. It goes in on the right side of the cooler when you're facing it from this side over here. And way over here, where I'm tapping, that is the return line. So I'm going to disconnect the return line, put a pan underneath because some fluid will leak out, and I'm going to connect in series from this point right here. Alright, here you can see the transmission oil cooler is in position. All you do is slide this in as shown, all the way through both the condenser and the radiator. And once this goes flush with this metal plate right here, you want to squish just a little bit of that foam pad so this doesn't vibrate around. And on the other side, you're going to take this, slide it over the end. It's going to click. Keep pulling it until it tightens down securely. Once it's tightened down, take cutters on the other side and cut them flush. Do that to all four, and then we're going to go on to the next step. Okay, the hoses are connected. You can see one here and the other one there. It routes underneath the condenser. There's adequate space for nothing to rub. Make sure nothing rubs. You don't want to cut through the hose from vibration with the vehicle while you're driving. So nylon tie things off to the side. And when you bend the hose, make sure there's adequate hose. You don't want to make a sharp turn, which may kink the hose. Now let me go on the other side and show you how to connect it. Now right over here is my feed line or pressure line coming from the tranny. Goes into the center of this bottom section of the radiator, and then the tube leaves right behind this hose. Over here I'm going to take off this return line, and I'm going to connect this line to the return line using a brass barbed connector, which looks like what you see right here. I was going to run this all the way to the transmission and put a new clamp on it, but it is kind of buried and it would be a lot more work that way. So I'm just going to use a barbed connector with two brand new clamps. Once I connect those two lines together, I'm going to take the other side of the new cooler and connect it right onto the nipple of the heat exchanger. So now I have both of them connected in series. It's going to flow through the one inside the radiator, through the one in front of the condenser, and then back to the transmission. Let me do that and I'll give you a closer look at what I did. Now I'm going to start up the vehicle, take it for a short drive to allow the transmission to reach normal operating temperature, inspect each connection, make sure that nothing is leaking, and I'm also going to double check the level of the automatic transmission fluid. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to rate thumbs up, subscribe, and post links to this video on other websites and blogs. Thank you very much for watching.